This is row zero. It looks and acts just like every other spreadsheet you've ever used. So enter your numbers, write your formulas. All the formulas are syntactically identical to Excel and Google Sheets, so there's nothing new to learn. You can think of row zero as Excel on steroids. The biggest difference is row zero runs in the cloud, whereas Excel and Google Sheets use the local memory and compute resources on your laptop. The benefits to running in the cloud are: one, performance. Row zero can open billion row datasets. Two, connectivity. Row zero easily connects to Databricks. It can import data at industry leading speeds and also write back to Databricks. And three is security. Row zero has security controls that allow admins to restrict data export, so you can prevent people from downloading sensitive data to their laptops. I'll walk through a bunch of different row zero features here to give you a high level overview. The number one way people start out using row zero is they will import a CSV from their computer. You can also import from a link, and then we've attached this public S3 bucket with a bunch of data sets that you can use to test the product. So this is a 1 gig CSV. It's got one row for every domestic airline flight in 2018. The import should finish up here shortly. Then we'll see the data. The data's in. And if I control arrow to the bottom, you can see we're on row 7.2 million, and I can immediately start writing my spreadsheet formulas. So maybe I'll do a COUNTIF to see how many flights there are out of Seattle's airport that year, and I get an instant answer of 140,000. So it's just super fast and performant. We have all the normal spreadsheet formulas: VLOOKUPs, XLOOKUPs, COUNTIFs, SUMIFs, anything you can think of, we support. The more powerful use case inside a big enterprise is connecting to your data warehouse. So we are going to import some data from Databricks here. Now we've already set up OAuth connectivity via Databricks. I'll demonstrate how this works here once Databricks connects. Now we select our schema. We'll just type a quick SQL query. We've got this data set called New York hospital data. This data set has one row for every hospital admission in New York State for about a 11-year time period. You'll see the data set start to come in here. It's about 31 million rows. The data's in. When we load data from a data warehouse like Databricks, we put it into what we call a connected table. So this looks like a preview, but it's not. All the data is here. I could scroll through this guy forever. If I want to see more rows, I can expand this little window. Or if I want to get the data into the underlying cells, I can right click and hit explode table. And this is like a copy paste values into the underlying cells. If we go to the bottom, you can see we're on row 31 million. So all the data is there. The benefit to this connected table is it maintains a connection to the underlying query in Databricks. So the really common use case we see is you will have a operations or finance team build some forecast or financial model in the adjacent rows or columns here. And so maybe a simple example is we'll just do a quick sum of total charges. This is some giant number that New York State has spent on healthcare. You can also add additional columns to this data set. So suppose I want total charges rounded to whole numbers. I can do round to 0 decimal places, hit enter, and this will execute for every single row of this data set. And now what I can do is schedule this query to run every day at whatever time I choose. So let's say 5 a.m. And now if I were to come back tomorrow and this data set has 32 or 33 million rows, it won't overwrite any of the formulas that I've written down here, but all the downstream values would update. So this sum would get larger. Any new rows would get a value in column 12. So you can build your model once and just keep coming back to it as the data in your Databricks account updates. Now this workflow that I showed you required me to write SQL, but it's very common for users of row zero to be analytical folks who know how to use a spreadsheet but are not proficient in SQL. And so the way those folks would experience the product is someone came to me and said, Nick, I need access to this hospital data set. I could write this query and then come up here and publish it as a data source. So we'll create a new data source, verify my query, call it New York hospital data. A lot of times data source creators will enumerate what's in every column in the description, but we'll just say test for now. And now I will create the data source. Once it's created, I can share it. And I could share this with anybody. I could share it with an LDAP group or individuals. And when those folks who it's been shared with log into row 0, they can go to their home screen, click on data sources. They'll see the data source we just created, and then they can open that. You can either run it for all the columns, or if you want to select specific columns, you can do that here. When I hit create workbook, this will now execute that query in Databricks with the new user's credentials. So if you have role-based access controls or RLS applied, you will only get the result set you are allowed to see. So I'm the creator of this, so I still get all of the rows. And now I'm in a spreadsheet. I didn't have to write any SQL. I've got my giant data set, and I can start analyzing it. And so outside of the normal spreadsheet functions, we got your typical BI features. So we can drop a pivot table in here. So let me just do that right here. This data set is kind of interesting to look at total charges by admission type by year. So let's just build out that pivot table. There's our pivot table. These are, of course, currencies. So let's format them. And then if I select this whole thing, we can graph it. And we will make it a stacked bar chart. And there you go. That was just a quick pivot and graph of 31 million rows. And you can see this trend over time. You can do a bunch of other stuff. Essentially anything you could do in Excel, you can do in row 0. This is sort of the core spreadsheet feature or spreadsheet functionality for row 0. But we have a bunch of other features on top of it. So one is we've got Google Sheets style sharing. You can give people viewer or editor permissions. You can also restrict sharing to only people within your work domain, so folks don't share data externally. You can also restrict data export, as I mentioned. So you prevent people from downloading giant data sets to their laptops. You can also configure the size of the clipboard. So the common security control enterprises put in place is they say, I don't want employees downloading data sets to their laptops, but I want to allow them to copy and paste as much data as you can fit on the screen. So that would allow someone to, copy and paste this pivot table into a PowerPoint or into an email, or similarly export this graph to put in a PowerPoint or an email, but they can't get giant amounts of data out in the form of CSV exports. All of our workbooks have automated versioning, so you can see the version history. Obviously, this workbook doesn't have a very extensive history, but if I wanted to label this so I could come back to it, I could do that here. We autosave anytime there's a major action in the workbook. And then if I hit open a new workbook, this would create a new workbook with that historical version or historical state. And so I'm right back where I started. And then we also have right back to Databricks. So if I created some financial forecast for 2026 that I wanted to store in Databricks or make available to other departments in Databricks, use this pivot table as an example, I can select it and hit export to Databricks. This will create a new table in Databricks in the database I select. And we require all new table names to be prefaced with RZ underscore. So you can't overwrite something you shouldn't. The way we've seen this best executed is data teams will give their business partners a separate schema to write back to. That's their sandbox. So they can write back as any table they want. And then anything that becomes valuable can either be moved over to the clean curated data set or could be joined against to be used for other analyses. This has been a high-level overview of row 0. Inside any big business, there are tons of people performing analytical work using spreadsheets. Typically what you find is data teams are building tons of dashboards to answer the questions from their business partners. And the number one action on all those BI dashboards is download CSV so it can be opened in Excel. Row 0 fills that gap by providing a powerful, connected, secure spreadsheet. So you give your business partners the tool they want, and it can perform all the actions they need.